Okay, here we go. I think we're recording. Welcome to KNES 402 for the winter 2026 semester. I'm Dr. Ross Miller. I'll be your instructor. You probably know me from KNES 300 if you recently took that course, which I think is most of you. I recently had some sun damage, frozen with liquid nitrogen off of my forehead, so apologies for my kind of strange appearance here. That's what's going on there. But welcome to the course. Hope you are looking forward to it. This is personally my favorite course to teach. Um, the first caution that I'll make here is this is a winter term course. It's a full 3 credit course that we normally spend 16 weeks covering in the spring and the fall. We'll cover all of that in like 3 weeks here. So it's a lot of work over a short amount of time. There's a lot of content to cover, and it's an online asynchronous course, meaning you have to cover it on your own time. There's no live content that I'm delivering that'll kind of keep you on schedule there. So be prepared to spend a lot of time daily on this winter term course. We cover a lot of content quickly. I've got a little PowerPoint to show here to get you started here on KNES 402. And here it is. Okay, so like I mentioned, this is an online asynchronous course. If you've never taken an online asynchronous course before, it is entirely possible that you will never at any time throughout this entire course interact live with me, like face-to-face live, like in my office or on Zoom or anything like that. If that seems kind of strange to you, it's not really. I've at least this is the first time I've taught a winter term course. I've taught this course in the summer before, and numerous times though, on in an online asynchronous format, and it's fairly normal, and that I would say even like the great majority of the students in the course when it's an online asynchronous one like this, never actually like interact live with me on Zoom or like face to face. So if you find yourself in that situation, if you're like midway through the course and you're like I haven't actually like talked to him at all. Like that may seem a little strange if you haven't taken a course like this before, but at least in my experience, that's a fairly normal way for students to go through a course like this. I'm of course available by email. That's the best way to usually quickly get in touch with me. And I suggest asking your question immediately, like straight away in writing. Don't, especially in a course like this where we're only spending a few weeks on it. Don't wait for a meeting. Don't email me to ask me if you can ask me a question. Just email me and include your question right away. That's generally the best and quickest way to get a resolution to whatever your question or your issue is. I can of course also meet on Zoom by request. I'm going to have limited availability January 18th through 23rd. I'm going to Italy for a biomechanics conference, which I'm pretty excited about. Normally, it's a conference that's given in Italian, but this year they're doing it in English, so I can go and participate there. I don't speak Italian, but as you can tell, I do speak English. So I'll be away then, and I'll still be available, but it's a different time zone. I think it's like 5 or 6 hours ahead of Maryland time, so my availability will be a little limited there. But with those constraints in place, I'm of course available to meet with you on Zoom if you would like, and we'll still have access to email throughout this time as well. So email is generally the best and quickest way to get in touch with me during a course like this. There's a syllabus posted on the course website. Please read it and take a look at it on Canvas. And with that logistics out of the way, let's talk a little bit about sport biomechanics. So what is sport biomechanics and what do we cover in this particular course? This course is primarily about the science of athletic performance and training for performance. And if you're expecting to see like biomechanics of specific sports, like biomechanics of basketball, biomechanics of football, biomechanics of baseball, there's not really much of that in this particular course. More the way that I've structured it is about the biomechanics of movements that are common to many sports. So movements like running, jumping, sprinting. All sports don't necessarily involve all of those movements, but I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that most sports involve at least one of, and in many cases, all of those movements, like running and jumping and sprinting, like in track and field, for example, like those are sports in and of themselves. But there's many sports, and I would argue most sports, where being good at running, good at jumping, good at sprinting is helpful, if not essential, for being good and performing well and for training in those sports. And so that's mostly what this course will focus on, is the biomechanics of sport type movements that are common and important to many sports. Beyond those three movements, we'll also focus on two other topics. My personal indulgence here is that we'll cover a topic on cycling, on riding a bike for sport and performance. I'm a cyclist myself. I used to run a lot, but as I've gotten a little bit older, I can't run quite as much as I used to. And so cycling is my avenue there to still maintain a high level of physical activity. Cycling is a great topic for biomechanics. It's this kind of nice, intriguing blend of the physiology and the mechanics of the athlete combined with the mechanics of the device of the bike, and that all blending together to highlight human performance and training for that performance. And then lastly, also on the topic of training and kind of returning to the original topic of something that's common to many sports, weightlifting is a sport in and of itself, in Olympic weightlifting and powerlifting, for example. But it's also a very common aspect of training for, of course, again, not every sport, but in the great majority of sports, weightlifting and training for strength and power and building your strength and your power at the muscular level is a critical component of training for many sports, not necessarily every sport, but certainly many sports. And so we'll cover some of the biomechanics of weightlifting. So biomechanics of running, jumping, sprinting, cycling, and weightlifting is what we will cover in this course. The focus is primarily on performance. There'll be a little bit on injury as it relates to performance. The best trait for an athlete, in my opinion, on performance is you have to be available to perform, which requires that you're healthy and able to be on the field or on the road or on the bike or in the gym. But there won't be a whole lot here on the specific minutia of the biomechanics of injury. If you're interested more in the biomechanics of injury, Dr. Shim teaches a 400 level course. I believe it's KNES 498 V clinical biomechanics and on a musculoskeletal injury that delves a little bit more into that. But here we're more about performance and training for performance. There'll be a little bit on injury as it relates to performance, but not a whole lot. So that's what's not so much in it. What is in it? A lot of what this course will focus on is modifiable biomechanics and biomechanics related factors that directly and indirectly affect performance in these movements in sports. And so on the biomechanics side of things, that's primarily the technique that you use to perform the movement and the equipment that you use to perform the movement. So that's generally what we'll focus on: running, jumping, sprinting, cycling, weightlifting. What are the effects of technique and equipment on your biomechanics that relate to performance and training for performance in that sport? And my last little bullet point here is if it's not obvious, I really like this class. I really like biomechanics and I really like sports. Sports are important in biomechanics for a similar reason for why I think sports are important in public health. A lot of us get into exercising early on in life because we want to play sports and be good at sports. And then for most of us, unless you're really good at sports, those opportunities for participation and competition end fairly early on in life. But then at that point, you've been into the exercise and you've gotten into doing the exercise and it's become part of your lifestyle. And you hopefully keep that up. And you keep that up hopefully across the lifespan, regardless of if you end up being an athlete as a career or not, which is not going to be the case for most of us unless you're a really, really good athlete. So that's one of the most important roles, I think, for sport early on in life is getting you introduced and engaged and dedicated to exercise and fitness as not just an important component, but an essential component of a healthy lifestyle across the lifespan. Sport kind of plays a similar role, in my opinion, as like a gateway into biomechanics. For better or worse, in the United States, at least, there's not a whole lot of like federal level funding and support and grant opportunities for doing research on sports and specifically sport performance. But you can still do a lot of really engaging, exciting, interesting research on the biomechanics of sports and the science of sports in general. And it's a really good way, I think, because people just have such an intrinsic like interest and excitement about sports. It's a really good way to get people early on who are new to biomechanics to get interested in and excited about biomechanics by attaching it to sport in general, if you just like sports, or to a specific sport if you're into like a specific sport. Like for me, when I was young, I was big into running. I didn't know that I could do like a master's thesis on the biomechanics of running. I found out that I could, and I was like, oh, wow, of course I want to do that. And then through that, I got more broadly interested in biomechanics in general, and that ended up being a career for me. So hopefully you get interested in the sport aspect of biomechanics, and then for many of you, hopefully that's a gateway into just being more broadly interested in biomechanics in general, and like biomechanics of aging and clinical biomechanics and orthopedic conditions and things of that nature. Sport can be a gateway into interest in that kind of more broader area of biomechanics. Okay, a little bit more about kind of managing expectations here. What do we actually do and what do we not do in this class? This is not an advanced version of KNES 300. The technical content of the course, like the calculations that you do on the homeworks, is I would say similar to the content of the calculations involved in like the lab exercises in KNES 300. They're not on like a whole other level of complexity than what you see in KNES 300. Like there's no calculations of the three-dimensional mechanics that we hint at in KNES 300. That's a little bit beyond the scope of what we get into in even a 400 level undergraduate course. In general, I would say this course is more concept focused and more qualitative than KNES 300 is. It's more about the concepts of sport biomechanics, not a whole lot about the nitty-gritty technical minutia of doing calculations of sport biomechanics. And like I mentioned previously, not a whole lot on injury. We'll touch a little bit on injury, but the focus of this course is really on performance and training for performance in biomechanics. Okay, what do we cover in KNES 402? What is the content here like? This course is predicated on readings in the primary literature on sport biomechanics, and there's a lot of readings. If you look under the readings folder in the course files, there's 46 journal articles there for you to read. Now, let's take a look at that. I'm gonna pull up my website here. Give me one second here. Okay, and let's share. Okay, hopefully you can see my web browser here. Okay, where here is the course website. And if I go to Files, and then under Readings, you'll see 5 different folders there, laid out in the order that we cover the topics in the class. So first we're going to cover running, and then jumping, and then sprinting, and then cycling, and then strength. And if you look in each one of those folders, they'll be again numbered 1 through whatever. Most of them have 10. The last one I think only has 6. The readings for that section of the class in the order that you should be working through them here. So there's 10 for running, 10 more for jumping, 10 more for cycling, sorry, for sprinting, 10 more for cycling, and then strength we run out of time a little bit, so there we only cover 6. But 46 separate readings that we will cover in this particular course. Now, most of them are fairly short. The great majority of them are what are called in science original research articles, where it's like describing an experiment, typically on human participants, testing an expectation or a scientific hypothesis, or just attaching numbers from an experiment to describe emotion, and sometimes using those data to test an expected scientific result. Those types of journal articles end up typically being fairly short, like they're typically something like 8 to 10 pages, and that'll typically include like a page of references that are important, but you don't typically need to like read through the reference list unless there's something there that you're particularly interested in. So most of those readings, even though there's a lot of them, most of them are fairly short. And a lot of them I would recommend if it's something that you're really personally interested in, then yeah, take a deep dive and read that paper really closely. Um, Most of the time you can probably get away with just kind of giving like a quick read or like a superficial skim of the paper just to kind of familiarize yourself with the content of it. And then you can dive into the more like deeper content of the course that's presented on that paper, which is delivered by me in the videos for the course. And if you haven't seen those videos yet, There's a link to it in the syllabus, and there'll be a link in the announcement that I'll post a little bit after I finish this video here. But if I go to YouTube here, oh, you guys can't see that. Sorry. There we go. Okay, if I go to YouTube here, hopefully nothing too embarrassing on my curated YouTube feed here. Go to playlists, go to KNES 402. And you don't know what I'm talking about. Stop. Okay, so you can see here, there's a list of recordings here. There's about 10 of them for running, 10 for jumping, 10 for sprinting, blah, blah, blah. For each one of those readings, there's a video of me walking you through that reading, kind of highlighting, what I think you should be getting out of that video, what the key points are here, and what it's trying to tell you about the biomechanics of running or jumping or sprinting or whatever that particular topic is. I really, really strongly recommend at least reading the abstract, if not the entire paper of that reading before launching into the video on that reading. I'm under no, delusions that everyone's necessarily going to do that for all 46 of these papers here. But that's my recommended approach for engaging with the content of this course is read the paper, read it quickly. Don't worry about if you get it or understand it or not, and then watch the video here. And that'll help you with me describing this in kind of more lay, non-expert terms. That'll hopefully help clarify, okay, what should I be getting out of this paper? What are the key points and takeaways for this paper here as it pertains to biomechanics? So that's the kind of the core content of the course and my recommendation for how you proceed through the course. So let me pull up the syllabus here. So at the end of the syllabus, there's this schedule here. And it'll say, okay, on day one, on Monday, January 5th, you should be going through the first four videos for running, which covers these first four readings for running. Okay. So that first one is Novacek. So give Novacek a quick read. Just kind of skim it. What's going on in Novacek? What has it got in it? And then watch the video. Okay. Then do the same thing for Joiner, which is running two. Same thing for Moore, running three. Same thing for Foland, running four. Okay. That's kind of the core content and engagement in the course is readings in sport biomechanics with videos of me kind of summarizing and highlighting the key take homes of those readings. Okay, let's go back to PowerPoint here. Okay, so most of those readings are fairly short. Some, specifically the first one in each section, like the first one for running, the first one for jumping, first one for sprinting, etc. Those tend to be fairly long. Those are more like 20 pages. And those are typically narrative reviews. And so that'll be kind of the structure of the course. For each new topic, like for running, it'll start off with a longer, like 20-ish page narrative review. And then after that, it'll do shorter original research articles. A narrative review is kind of a selective summary of the state of knowledge of a field at the time the review is written. And so I start off the section with a narrative of each section of the course, whether it's running, jumping, sprinting, whatever. I started off with a narrative review to kind of introduce you to the sport biomechanics of running, jumping, sprinting, whatever, and broadly. And then after that, we launch into the original research articles, which are shorter, more focused, deeper dives into a more specific topic in the biomechanics of running or jumping or sprinting or whatever the topic may be. And like I said, I think it's critical to read the paper before watching the video. I mean, there are no delusions everyone's going to do that, but please at least read the abstract first to kind of at least superficially familiarize yourself with what is this paper about, and then watch the video where I walk you through, okay, what should you be getting out of this paper? But I very much recommend reading the paper first, even if you just do it quickly and don't fully understand what's going on before you watch the video. Okay, grade from this course comes from two things, homeworks and exams. When you take this course in the in-person format in the spring and the fall, there's a little bit more of a participation component, but that's kind of hard to replicate here in the 3-week online asynchronous format. So here there's homeworks and there's exams. The homeworks are case study type problems. You will do some calculations similar to the calculations involved in the KNES 300 labs. At least the first three homeworks are like that. The last two don't really involve any direct calculations, but you'll do some calculations. If you're struggling with those calculations, if I go back to where'd my website go? I lost it. Sorry, guys. I'm getting old here and starting to struggle with technology. Where is, there we go. All right. Okay, if you're struggling with the calculations on those first three homeworks, if you go to the YouTube playlist here and scroll down past the videos on the papers to the bottom, you'll see three videos here titled Homework Number One, Sample Calcs, Homework Number Two, Sample Calcs, Homework Number Three, Sample Calcs. Those are me walking you through in Microsoft Excel how to do the calculations on those first three homeworks. And so if you get stuck on those, like if you're doing it at night and the homework is due pretty soon, and I'm probably not going to respond to an email at 10:30 at night, you can take a look there on those YouTube videos, and that's me walking you through how to do the calculations in those particular homeworks. So check on those if you get stuck. You can of course also reach out to me for help on homeworks. I'm happy to help you with that. But if you want like a quick solution to getting help on the homeworks, that's a good source there. One thing to get used to on the homeworks here is they're fairly clear instructions in terms of what you're supposed to be calculating and what the questions are, but they're fairly vague on what you are supposed to actually turn in. The prompt will say something like, collect all your answers into a single file and turn it into a PDF and submit it on campus. Well, what is supposed to be in that file exactly? That is largely up to you. The labs in KNES 300 were deliberately structured in a way where like the very first one is extremely specific and hand-holdy. We literally like give you an example of like, here's a 10 out of 10 lab report, make yours look like that. Then as the labs proceeded, they became less and less specific on what you're actually supposed to do and a little bit more broad and open-ended and more up to you on what you're including in that report to effectively answer this question that you're given to address in that particular lab. And the homeworks in this class kind of pick up where we left off there in that last report in KNES 300. So you're given some questions here in these homeworks, and what you include to demonstrate as an answer to that question is largely up to you. So like the first homework, for example, will give you some data on three runners and we'll ask you, okay, which one of these runners is the most economical runner? And you have to choose which one is most economical, but choosing correctly which one's most economical, that's something you have to do, but it's not the important part of the homework. The important part is including an explanation on why you think that person is the most economical runner. If I was going to do the homework, like that first particular homework, there's the one that I personally would pick as the most economical runner. And I probably know a little bit more about biomechanics and running economy than you, so maybe I have a better answer for that. But you can credibly argue for any one of the three runners in the first homeworks that any one of them is the most economical runner, right? I'm not necessarily the infallible, all-seeing authority on who's the most economical runner. I have my particular answer that I think is a good answer, but I can credibly explain why I think it's a good answer. And that's what I want you to try to do on these homeworks. So it's less about, in the first one, for example, like, did you pick the same one that I would pick as the most economical runner? And more about, okay, whoever you picked, whether it's the one that I would pick or not, give an explanation based on biomechanics and using terms from biomechanics and using content from this course to argue why you think they're the most economical runner. And engaging in that effort and doing that effort and thinking critically about, okay, why do I think this particular one is the most economical runner? Or just in the homeworks broadly, like, why am I answering this way? Why do I think based on the biomechanics that this is a good answer? That's the important part about the homework and the part that I'm really looking for to assess whether you did a good job on that homework or not. So it's less about like, did you pick the right answer that I was looking for? and more about did you give an interpretation of that answer. So the answers for the homeworks aren't necessarily going to be found by poring over the lecture videos or doing the readings really close. I don't think there's a single homework where like the answer is found in one of the videos or one of the readings necessarily. You have to engage with that content and then use that content to think about, okay, why do I think this is a good answer here? Yeah, that's the most important part of the homeworks. Again, given here the accelerated pace of this winter term course, don't put off starting on the homeworks. As soon as you're watching this video, I would go and download homework number one and start taking a look at it and getting started on working on it today. That's due on a Thursday of this week of class here. So that'll sneak up on you. So don't put off starting those. They're not intended to be particularly onerous or difficult, but especially as we start out here, it may take you a little bit longer to get going on that and to finish that than you might initially think it's going to take. Um, and in this class where you're all kind of electively taking a second biomechanics course, and I assume you have a little some personal interest in biomechanics, hopefully. I'm not a huge stickler for like the deadlines on these things. If you need another day or so on like the homeworks, then just go ahead and email me. And as long as you're asking in advance and you don't even need a reason, if all you need is like one more day, just say, hey, I'm a little bit behind. I could really use another day on this, and I'll, unless something strange is going on, I'll typically grant you that extension if you want it. So don't hesitate to reach out if you need a little bit of extra time there. Okay, exams again. This is a fast-paced course. These are going to sneak up on you. The midterm exam is on Tuesday of next week, Tuesday, January 13, and the final exam is on the last day of class, Friday, January 23rd. These are taken online on Canvas. You can take them anytime that particular day, but as soon as you start it, then you have to finish it like during that particular time block. So the midterm exam, for example, is a 50-minute exam. And you can start it anytime on Tuesday, January 13th, but then when you sit down, then the clock starts and you have 50 minutes to finish it from whatever time you started. But you don't have to start it at any particular time as long as you're starting it at some point on Tuesday, January 13th. Final exam, because those are typically a 2 hour period. There, you then also have a 2 hour period to take this online final exam. You can take it any time of the day on Friday, January 23rd, and it'll start a 2 hour timer as soon as you start it on that particular day. Each one of those is worth 25% and similar to the homeworks, they're in case study format where it'll describe a situation with an athlete and you'll have to give, an answer and you'll have to give your explanation for why you think that's a good answer and cite content from the course to support that for the answer. And I'll give you a little bit more content specifically on what those are like as we get a little bit closer to those exams. But that's generally what the exams are like. So you take them online, open note and all that, just like they were in KNES 300. And there'll be case study format where you'll have to have an athlete who's having a particular challenge or goal or problem, suggest what you think they should do to address that problem, and then explain why you think that's a good answer based on the content of this course. Okay, that is it for my little intro there. Again, feel free to reach out if you have any questions on the logistics of the course or just on sport biomechanics in general. Again, we're moving fast here, so get going, get engaged in reading those papers and watching those videos. Make sure you take a look at that first homework that'll sneak up on you. That's due on Thursday. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. All right, take care.